You always told yourself that if a man ever cheated on you, you would leave. No second chances, no closure conversations, no negotiations, just gone. It felt like the clearest line you had ever drawn. Then it actually happens, and instead of walking away, you freeze. Even with the messages right there, the lies unraveling, the hidden profile, the proof you cannot unsee, you still feel love for him. That part blindsides you more than the betrayal itself. When the truth sinks in, everything feels disorienting. The man you trusted, the one you built routines with, made future plans with, laughed with at 2 a.m., he suddenly feels like a stranger. But your heart won't let go of the version of him you fell in love with. So you start filling in the gaps yourself. Maybe you were too distant. Maybe he felt unloved. Maybe it was nothing, just a meaningless fling. You replay moments looking for signs you missed, wondering if there's something here you could still fix. Then he apologizes. He promises therapy, deletes numbers, tells you he can't lose you. And for a moment, just a moment, you see something that looks like sincerity rather than strategy. That's where the real war begins. Not between you and him, but between what you know and what you feel. If you're tempted to stay after everything, it doesn't mean you're naive. It doesn't mean you're weak. It means betrayal doesn't erase years of emotional investment overnight. And the psychology behind that pull is far more powerful than anyone warns you about. So before you judge yourself for not leaving immediately, you need to understand what's actually happening beneath the surface. Because the reasons you feel pulled to stay aren't random. They're deep psychological patterns that have been quietly working in the background, keeping you tied to the very man who hurt you. Attachment to familiarity and fear of identity disruption. When you've been with someone for years, your life doesn't just revolve around them emotionally. It's structurally built around them. You wake up next to him. You text him throughout the day without thinking. Your weekends, your friend group, your finances, your future, all of it is woven together. So if you leave, you're not just losing a boyfriend, you're losing a routine, a lifestyle, a version of yourself that only existed inside that relationship. That's why even after catching him, a part of you holds on. You think about starting over and it feels exhausting, downloading apps again, explaining what happened to strangers, sitting through awkward first dates, rebuilding a similar connection from absolute zero. Staying means you don't have to blow up your entire life overnight. The pain is real, but at least it's familiar. And sometimes familiar pain genuinely feels safer than stepping into a future you can't see yet. Erosion of self-worth and abandonment anxiety. Cheating has a cruel way of turning inward. Instead of landing where it belongs, on him, on his choices, on his character, it somehow becomes a question about you. You start replaying things, wondering if you weren't affectionate enough, attractive enough, present enough. A quiet voice starts asking, what was actually wrong with me? You find yourself searching for her, looking through her profile, studying her pictures, picking apart every detail. And then comes the question that cuts the deepest. What does she have that I don't? Is she prettier, more interesting, more exciting? You start comparing yourself to a woman you've never met, measuring your worth against someone who owes you nothing, all because the man who promised you everything chose to go looking elsewhere. And then comes the thought that's harder to admit out loud. At least he came back. What if no one else ever does? That fear doesn't always announce itself. It just sits there, subtle and heavy, making the idea of being alone feel more unbearable than staying with someone who hurt you. No one to text, no one to come home to, nobody to call yours. And then you're tolerating things you swore you never would, not because you think you deserve it, but because a small, wounded part of you has started to think this is simply the best you're going to get. When the choice feels like familiar hurt versus the unknown, your mind will almost always reach for what it already knows. Shame, ego protection, and social image preservation. Cheating doesn't just break your heart, it wounds your pride in a way that's hard to explain. You told your friends he was different. You defended him when people had doubts. You posted the pictures, celebrated the milestones, believed in what you had, publicly. So when you find out he cheated, leaving means admitting that the thing you vouched for wasn't real. It means sitting across from people who are going to have questions, hearing, "I never really trusted him," or worse, "How did you not see it coming?" Sometimes staying feels easier than walking into that. So you tell yourself it wasn't that serious, that every relationship has problems, that you don't want your personal life becoming a topic of conversation. In a strange way, staying feels like damage control. If you don't leave, it doesn't have to become a public story. But what looks like loyalty from the outside is usually just ego protection on the inside. Social conditioning and normalization of betrayal.
Some of this didn't start with him. It started in your childhood home, at the dinner table, in conversations you weren't allowed to be listening to. Maybe you watched your father do it and your mother stay. Maybe you grew up surrounded by women who swallowed their pain and called it commitment. And nobody ever told you that was wrong, so somewhere along the way, it just became normal. Then came the words that got repeated so many times they stopped feeling like opinions and started feeling like facts. Men make mistakes. At least he comes home to you. You don't throw away a whole relationship over one incident. You heard it from aunties, from older women, maybe even from your own mother. And when you hear something enough, it quietly rewires what you believe you're allowed to expect. So when it happens to you, instead of trusting the part of you that knows better, you start talking yourself out of it. Maybe you're overreacting. Maybe this is just what love looks like once the honeymoon phase is over. Maybe walking away makes you someone who gives up too easily, someone who couldn't hold it together. And if there are children involved, a shared home, a life that took years to build, it gets even more complicated. Suddenly, you're not just weighing your heart, you're weighing everything. Stability starts to feel more responsible than self-respect. Over time, that kind of thinking lowers your standards. It makes betrayal feel like you're supposed to absorb. And once you've absorbed it enough times, it makes you feel like you have no other option. Staying doesn't even feel like a choice anymore. It just feels like what you do.
Parental guilt and responsibility distortion.
When you have children with him, the decision stops being just about you and him. It becomes about school runs and bedtime routines and what happens to their Christmas. You start playing out scenarios in your head, shared custody, weekends without your kids, another woman eventually entering the picture. The logistics alone feel overwhelming before you've even processed the betrayal. So you talk yourself into staying, and you frame it as maturity. 2 parents under one roof has to be better than a broken home. You tell yourself you're doing it for them, protecting them from disruption, keeping their world intact. The guilt wraps around you, and you carry it like it's yours to carry, even though he's the one who cracked the foundation. You shrink your own pain down to something manageable. You tolerate things you shouldn't have to tolerate, and you convince yourself that keeping the family together is worth it, without stopping to ask whether the home you're holding together is actually a safe or healthy one for them or for you.
Emotional attachment and trauma bonding. Love doesn't switch off the moment trust is broken. You shared years with this person, inside jokes, late nights, the kind of comfort that comes from someone knowing you completely. Your brain built real attachment around his presence, around the sound of his voice, around the feeling of him being there. That doesn't just dissolve because he hurt you. So you end up split in two. One part of you is angry, humiliated, grieving. Another part still reaches for him, still wants his reassurance, still catches itself missing him in quiet moments. Both things are true at the same time, and it's disorienting in a way that's hard to describe to anyone who hasn't felt it. And if he's the kind of man who moves between hurting you and loving you intensely, crying, apologizing, pulling you close, swearing it will never happen again, that cycle does something to you over time. The relief you feel when he's warm again gets mistaken for proof that the relationship is worth saving. The good moments feel like evidence, the bad ones start to feel like exceptions. And that push and pull, that constant back and forth between pain and comfort with the same person, is what keeps you long after logic has already told you to go. If you still love him after everything he put you through, that doesn't make you foolish, it makes you human. Comfort, fear, shame, the way you were raised, the children you're protecting, the attachment you built over years, none of that disappears simply because trust did. These things are real, and they are heavy, and pretending otherwise doesn't make them easier to carry. But understanding them changes something. Because once you can see that the pull to stay isn't fate, isn't love proving itself, isn't a sign that he's worth holding on to, once you recognize it as psychology, as patterns, as wounds that were there long before he came along, you stop being at the mercy of it. You get to make a real choice, one that comes from clarity rather than fear. Hold on to this. Love is not measured by how much pain you are willing to absorb. It never was. Real love is supposed to protect your peace, not cost it. If this helped you see your situation from a different angle, stay with me, because we are going much deeper into the psychology of relationships, the invisible patterns that keep you stuck, and what it actually takes to break them.